Before I bring in the Leader of the SNP, can I just say to people now, I'm expecting a limit of 8 minutes to start us off with. Ian Blackfort.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I must say it's disappointing in some respects that the speech this afternoon was affected by a protest in the gallery. But let me say this. We all recognise that what we saw today was very much the spirit of the suffragettes. We on this side of the House understand the suffering of the women born in the 1950s that have been betrayed by this government. When women pay national insurance, they do it on the basis that they're going to get a pension. And to find that women have had their pension entitlement taken from them, in some cases for 6 years, and only given 14 months' notice. And I have to say to the Minister who's sitting on the front bench, who seems to be suggesting that the Scottish Government can fix this, it's a reserved matter. The only people that should be fixing this, and I can understand the frustration of the 1950s women, and it's about time that many of these women that are suffering in poverty get what is rightly theirs. And it's shameful that the Conservative Government and the Chancellor hasn't even got the good grace to stay and listen to the third-party speech. That's the contempt that the Chancellor shows for Parliament and for 1950s women. He's not the Chancellor, and he never will be. You know, the Chancellor did state that this is the first Monday budget since 1962. I should perhaps remind him that his predecessor that gave the budget on a Monday was gone in 3 months. We know that the Prime Minister's got little time for the Chancellor, and there's no doubt that he will be gone soon. You know, we hear much about the ending of austerity, although when the Prime Minister talks about ending of austerity, there's no real sign of that from the Chancellor's statement. And it's trumpeted and cheered to the rafters by those in the Tory benches that there's going to be investment in universal credit. And of course, we welcome the fact that there is some additional money going in. But when you look at the budget book, well, you know what? Shouting out like this, and this is serious, because this is about people that are really suffering, and all you can do is chunter from a sedentary position. Show some respect to people in this country for once. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, when we look at this, and we find that the investment in universal credit through the work allowance next year is £545 million, the Joseph Rownstreet Foundation tell us that it's actually £2 billion that's required. And when there's that investment that's going in of £545 million, there's a tax cut through the increase in the higher rates, which is worth £2.8 billion. That's the reality and the priorities of the Conservative Government. Austerity coming to an end? Don't kid us. Mr Deputy Speaker, the budget statement shows a chronic lack of understanding of the threats that we face in the storm clouds ahead. The icy blast that has come this weekend is a foretaste of the dark winter to come, a winter that the Tory government are ill prepared for. 10 years since the Labour Party presided over the financial crash, the Conservative Party today risk another. 10 years on from the onset of the last recession. I wish that people in Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom can see the member for Stirling that sits there and laughs while we discuss matters of great importance to the people of this country. The Scottish Conservatives are a disgrace to the people of Scotland. They should be utterly ashamed of themselves. Mr Deputy Speaker, you can shout all you like. I'll tell you what's shocking. It's the budget that we've had from the Chancellor of the Exchequer today. That's what's shocking. Mr Deputy Speaker, 10 years on from the onset of the last recession, history tells us that statistically we are likely to be closer to the next recession than we are from the last. The UK's preparedness and ability to respond is impacted by the failure of leadership of the Chancellor and his government. And how ill prepared has the Chancellor come to the dispatch box today? And it's a pity he is not here. What disrespect that the Chancellor has shown. Over the weekend, the Chancellor said he may have to change his forecast if there's a no-deal Brexit. Mr Speaker, can we even believe this budget? What price are we all going to have to pay for a no-deal Brexit? Maybe the Prime Minister doesn't as hours after the Chancellor made his announcement that a no deal would require a change in forecast, Number 10 said it wouldn't. What an utter shambles. Whose budget is this? The Chancellor's or the Prime Minister's? Mr Speaker, the Chancellor comes before us today without adequate planning to give us any of the assurances that his government can protect our economy over the next few months, never mind the next few years. And to add insult to injury, Mr Speaker, we were promised £350 million a week as the Brexit dividend. It was on the side of a bus. Instead, we're getting 50p. A shiny new 50 pence to distract from the devastation that this government walks blindly into as it railroads ahead with its Brexit plan.
Thank you. Can I just say, Mr Philp, it is up to the member whether he wishes to give way, and I think it's quite clear that he's not giving way. Ian Blackfort.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, but I think there is a precedent that the third-party speech in the budget is held without intervention. Mr Speaker, it is not just a no-deal Brexit that will cost families. Even if the UK gets a deal, it will cost families. The whole Brexit process is going to hit the economy. There is no such thing as a good Brexit. And the House must wake up to that reality. Yeah, you carry on gesticulating. You really are the village idiot. The storm is coming, and this government hasn't even brought an umbrella, never mind the shelter we need. This budget leaves us wholly unprepared for the Brexit bombshell heading towards us. It fails to protect current and future generations. An end to austerity, said the Prime Minister. Mr Deputy Speaker, Scotland's budget will have been slashed by £1.9 billion since the Tories came to power. This from a Tory government ideologically obsessed with austerity, because after all, austerity is a political choice. We hear about the government's hands having been tied by the debt burden, and yet, over the last 9 years, the government has found £435 billion of new money for quantitative easing. Those with money and assets were rewarded with rising house prices and financial asset prices. Ordinary working folk, the poor and the disabled, were rewarded with austerity. They paid the price for the financial crash. The IFS has been clear that even the mildest version of ending austerity would cost a minimum of £19 billion, the equivalent of a penny on income tax, national insurance and on VAT. An analysis published by the Resolution Foundation stated that we needed to see a boost of annual spending of £31 billion by 2022-23 to end austerity. So let's not kid ourselves that the Tories are going to end austerity. It simply isn't going to happen. There is no such boost. Austerity has not ended. Austerity remains under this Tory government. This Tory government continues to balance the books on the shoulders of the poorest and the most vulnerable, yet they continue to give away tax cuts. That's the reality. That's why austerity is purely and simply a political choice of this Conservative government. To end austerity, the Chancellor should have need to cancel the final year of the 4-year freeze in benefits and reverse cuts in in-work benefits introduced as part of the rollout of the new universal credit system. This would cost a combined £5.1 billion by 2022-2023. We already know that cuts to social security since 2010 will cost £39 billion a year by 2021-2022. That's £39 billion taken out the pockets of those who would spend cash on goods and services. Mr Deputy Speaker, cutting the incomes of the poorest in our society has depressed growth in the economy. The only people that can't see it are the Conservatives. Over the same period, the living wage, well, I'll tell you what, if you bring in the real living wage, then we'd support you. But you're miles away from doing that. Over the same period as the Women's Budget Group have calculated, tax giveaway will cost the Treasury 47 billion. 39 billion taken out of the pockets of the poorest, 47 billion given in tax cuts, robbing Sarah to pay John. This heartless Conservative government has utterly failed to do the right thing, robbing citizens across the United Kingdom of a chance of increased living standards and the prosperity our communities deserve from economic growth. Austerity is hurting, and this budget will continue to hurt citizens through Tory austerity. Again, with the Tory government, it's cheap promises. Well, we've had enough of broken promises. The SNP will not support a budget that will make our economy smaller and weaker and make our people poorer. From 2010, consecutive UK governments have delivered empty promises and robbed Scotland, limiting the opportunities of our Parliament and our people. This year, the Scottish Government's fiscal budget will be £1.9 billion lower in real terms than it was in 2010-11. It is more than the statistics. It is the harsh impact on those who depend on our public services, the young, those in work, the elderly and the disabled. We all pay a price for Tory austerity.
Well done, absolutely.
Mr Deputy Speaker, with Brexit coming down the tracks, this government has picked up where Labour left off and abandoned the people of Scotland. Instead of arming themselves with a budget that would protect jobs, drive investment and boost growth, the UK government has delivered a budget that will leave the communities of the United Kingdom frozen in failure. Time and time again we were told that the economy in Scotland would be stronger if we stayed with the United Kingdom. The Union would protect jobs. The Union would protect the Scottish economy. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Union is threatening to destroy our economy by dragging us out of the European Union against our will. Mr Deputy Speaker, closing the door on the single market and the customs union is risking 80,000 jobs and risk losses of £2,300 on average from every person in Scotland. This budget, this union, has placed at the foot of the people of Scotland a choice of two futures. A future tied to a union with the UK that will lead to further hardship and a deepening of austerity, or a future with Scotland and the European Union filled with opportunity, prosperity and economic growth. An outward-looking Scotland, a destination within Europe, or an inward-looking United Kingdom. The Chancellor today has made the case for the SNP. Like their Labour predecessors, this UK government has shown its incompetence. Distracted and divided by the chaos of Brexit, the government has not prepared for the future. Where is the vision? Where is the plan to create the circumstances that will encourage investment, that will drive up productivity and result in real wage growth? The fact that we have had the worst decade for wage growth in over 200 years should have sparked action by a government to deal with the action. But what do we have? Inaction. The Prime Minister famously talked about helping those just about managing. They have shown to be hollow words from the Prime Minister and her do-nothing Chancellor. This is a budget that cannot weather the Brexit storm. This is a Brexit bombshell budget, with the clock ticking down to deliver absolute economic chaos to households right across the country. And, you know, for people watching, Conservative members of Parliament sit and laugh. We talk about people that are going to be in economic hardship, and Tory MPs laugh about the impact of a hard Brexit. That's the reality. Mr Speaker, the Chancellor came before us today, came and gone, with his trick or treat budget. He comes in the hope that the small number of welcome announcements, most of which are undoing his government's shoddy policies, that we will be distracted from the bigger picture. Well, we are not. He might trick some of his more gullible backbenchers. He's not tricking us. The UK is facing a significant socio-economic and political crisis with Brexit, and this budget utterly fails to build a safety net for our economy's future post any exit of the European Union. We have been very clear that only membership of the single market and the customs union, short of remaining in the European Union, will best protect our economic future. Yet this government blunders on, leading us to a no-deal Brexit that will be an economic catastrophe. It is widely accepted by economists that if the UK leaves the EU without a deal, there will be material economic disruption. Already, we have seen a weakened currency, higher inflation and lower business investment growth as a result of instability and a lack of security. Mr Deputy Speaker, the EU is the largest market for Scotland's international exports, worth £12.7 billion in 2016. The UK Government's own analysis shows that reverting to World Trade Organisation trading rules would reduce growth by 8%. Scottish Government analysis shows that hard Brexit threatens to cost our economy £12.7 billion a year by 2030 compared to remaining in the EU. Worse still, even if the UK signs a free trade agreement with the EU, this means Scotland's GDP will be £1,610 per person lower by 2030. Households are already paying the price. As Mark Carney told the Treasury Select Committee, real household incomes are about £900 lower than we forecast in 2016. The question is, what drove that difference? Some of it is ascribed to Brexit. That's the reality from Mark Carney. The only solution to offset economic disaster, short of staying in the European Union, is to stay in the single market and the customs union. Now, I am pleased to see that some on the Labour benches agree with us on this. The question is now, does the Leader of the Opposition agree with me? We need to get real. The Chancellor has not insulated our economy to deal with Brexit. The Prime Minister is hamstrung by the extreme Brexiteers in her own party. We cannot and we must not allow the extreme Brexiteers to hold the UK to ransom. We must unite across this House to protect our economic future. So today, Mr Speaker, I call on the Leader of the Opposition, if he is true to his word and that he agrees with me that this budget is unfit for the future, that he joins with the Scottish National Party, with Plaid Cymru, with the Greens and with the Liberal Democrats to keep us in the single market and the customs union. Today, Mr Speaker, Labour must show that they can be an opposition and join with the effective opposition to tell the Prime Minister that she will not get a deal through this House that does not keep us in the single market and the customs union. Mr Deputy Speaker, the stakes are high. We have time, but not much. And the Chancellor still has time to rethink his fiscally flawed decisions to help protect our economy. While many will study the detail of what's in the budget, we must also examine what is not. The UK Government should rethink and back SNP and IOD demands to introduce an SME support service to help firms map out and prepare their supply chains to deal with Brexit. There is so much missing from this budget. Where is the removal of the fees for residency of EU citizens applying to remain in the UK? It is morally reprehensible that those living here, who through no fault of their own, are facing a charge to protect their residency. That is not making EU citizens who live here welcome. It is, by extension, another impact, yet another impact, of the Prime Minister's hostile environment. The Chancellor could have waived these fees today. Mr Deputy Speaker, last year the Chancellor righted a wrong when Scotland's emergency services were to be no longer charged VAT. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, where is the £175 billion that had already been paid? We want it back to invest in our emergency services, and I expect that the Scottish Tory MPs would back us and get Scotland's money back that we should have to invest in our public services. Yet again, this Government has ignored SNP calls to support our oil and gas industry at a time of recovery. Why again has the Chancellor sat on his hands? The UK Government once again not stepping up to support the Scottish oil and gas sector. Then, Mr Deputy Speaker, there are farmers and crofters, and I declare an interest as an active crofter.
Well done.
Along with my honourable friend from the Mail and Yarn. Mr Deputy Speaker, I can hear the jive from across the other side, and I'll take it. I am just a simple crofter with 10 acres worth of fully standard.
I've got 15.
let's deal with the seriousness of the situation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the European Union recognised the underfunding of hill crofters and farmers in 2013, creating a new fund for which payments were to be made between 2016 and 2020. Almost 90% of these funds were meant to come to Scotland. Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we've been shortchanged. We have been given 16.5% of the funds, £160 million of payments that should be going to Scottish farmers and crofters has not materialised. Where is it, Chancellor? Why have you not given the money that Scottish crofters and farmers are due? Why have you withheld funds that were explicitly meant for Scotland? Why do you think it's right to hold back EU funds you were meant to pass over? It is little wonder that our crofters and farmers should worry about funding post-Brexit from this UK government. The government, after all, has formed. Mr. Deputy Speaker, make no mistake, there is a serious breach of trust in not passing over funds the EU earmarked from Scotland. I would go as far as to say that's money that has been stolen by this government from the pockets of crofters and farmers. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me turn to what the Chancellor has done in this budget. With Brexit having pushed inflation above its 2% target for each month since February 2017, I welcome that the Chancellor froze fuel duty. Let me also welcome the fact that the UK Government has finally lived up to its responsibility on broadband. It is, after all, a reserved matter. Mr. Deputy Speaker, despite a few welcome gimmicks, Scotland's promised £600 million in NHS consequentials, we're only getting £550 million. Once again, we've been shortchanged. £50 million that should be coming to Scotland for health that we're not getting. Mr. Deputy Speaker, those at the bottom of the pile will continue to struggle while Tories fail to put dignity and respect at the heart of their social security policies. By 2021, low-paid women stand to lose £1,400 a year from changes to universal credit, according to the WBG. A couple with 2 children will be £832 a year worse off because of the benefit freeze, according to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. 600,000 three-children families will see £2,500 a year robbed from their budgets, and with those of 4 or more children losing around £7,000 a year. Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor could have done the right thing today. He could have halted and fixed universal credit, but instead he has failed to go far enough to put money into the pockets of those that desperately need it. The SNP have long championed the case against the cuts to the work allowances, and another U-turn from the Tories is welcome, but it doesn't go far enough. The Chancellor's increased spending on universal credit is nothing but a drop in the ocean. He is putting a sticking plaster on a wound that needs redressed. His failure to halt and review universal credit means more people will be left behind, left in poverty, left in hardship, and left struggling by a Conservative government. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't think there is a magic money tree, but there are political choices that can be made. A choice to deliver a society where those who are sick or employed can be helped out of hardship, or a society that punishes the poor and abandoning those out of work. Why has the Chancellor failed again to end age discrimination and give young people, as well as other workers, a real living wage? Mr. Deputy Speaker, since Brexit, electricity bills have gone up by 17.1% and gas bills by 4.3%. Young people are continuing to be left behind with the higher price tags. All workers should be treated fairly, yet this government continues to underpay young people. Young people have again been shortchanged as the Chancellor has failed to pay a real living wage. Well, Mr. Speaker, young people in Scotland deserve better. The Chancellor should immediately devolve the powers so that the SNP Scottish Government can uplift young people and end this discrimination. But it is not just young people, and I want to return to the issue of the 1950s women who have seen their pensionable age increased by as much as 6 years, in some cases with only 14 months' notice. We in the SNP have long accepted that equalisation of men and women's pensionable age should happen, but the women affected by the changes had paid national insurance under the condition that they would get their state pension earlier than many of them are now. They have been shortchanged. Women's pensionable age has increased too quickly, and many are living in poverty, relying on benefits. And of course, there was a debate held in Westminster Hall where the Pensions Minister ludicrously suggested that the women affected should think about going on apprenticeship schemes. Talk about a lack of humanity. Absolutely outrageous. This is a government that simply doesn't get it and doesn't accept its responsibilities. Why was this not addressed in the budget? Where is the dignity? Where is the compassion for the millions of women who have given a lifetime of service? Mr Deputy Speaker, it is shameful, utterly shameful, that this has not been addressed, and this issue is not going to go away. The Chancellor should have listened to the SNP on 1950s women and more widely on austerity. The Scottish Government is already delivering mitigation of £125 million in this year alone to protect those hit by Tory austerity. We have established in law that social security is a human right. Let me commend it to this House. You might think about it. We are building a social security system based on dignity and respect. Mr Deputy Speaker, society is only as strong as its weakest link. Social security is not just a nice thing to provide. It is a necessity that we provide as a safety net to those that need it. We're also working to bolster our economy and society by supporting business and working to boost job opportunities and growth. A 64% increase of £270 million in the economy, jobs and fair work budget as part of the total investment of £2.4 billion in enterprise and skills. A 70% increase in investment in business research and development. £18 million as part of the £65 million package of investment in the National Manufacturing Institute. Setting aside resources of £340 million to provide initial capitalisation for the Scottish National Investment Bank. The Leader of the Opposition called for a state investment bank in the United Kingdom. We are getting one in Scotland, courtesy of the SNP. Mr Deputy Speaker, an ambitious programme of infrastructure investment for 2018-19 of more than £4 billion, in line with the programme of government commitment to invest £20 billion over the lifetime of our Scottish Parliament. That's a commitment to infrastructure investment. Mr Deputy Speaker, in Scotland, we are using the powers that we have to change lives for the better and to strengthen our economy and its working. Scotland has strong economic fundamentals with the higher growth than the UK as a whole and the most inward investment anywhere in the UK outside of London. Scotland's economy grew by 0.5% in the second quarter of 2018, faster than the UK, and over the past 12 months the Scottish economy has grown by 1.7%, faster than the 1.2% in the UK. The Scottish Government delivering for the people of Scotland. According to the Office of National Statistics, long-term pay growth has been highest in Scotland and lowest in Wales. Median pay for full-time workers was 87% higher in Scotland than it was in 1997. Fraser of Allender expects Scottish growth to have higher growth and lower unemployment in the UK in 2019 and 2020. Scotland's female unemployment rate fell over the quarter and the year to 3.2%, lower than the UK's 4%. Mr Deputy Speaker, in the face of Tory austerity, the Scottish Government is building an economy of the future with measures to unlock innovation and drive increased productivity. In Scotland, these measures outlined in the programme for government have been welcomed by the business sector. Scottish businesses, customers and our workforce rely on robust and reliable infrastructure as the foundation which keeps our economy moving, and it is right to increase investment in this area. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, it won't stop there. The Scottish Growth Commission's report is clear that an independent Scotland can leave the broken economic model of the UK and deliver an inclusive, sustainable growth programme. If the approach to spending growth recommended by the Commission had been applied by Westminster over the past decade, the £1.9 billion cut in real terms to Scotland's budget would have been wiped out. Mr Deputy Speaker, the report recommends adopting the following fiscal rules. The deficit is reduced to below 3% of GDP within 5 to 10 years. The national debt does not increase beyond 50% of GDP and stabilises at that level. Borrowing is undertaken for public investment only over the course of the economic cycle. Closing the per capita income gap with the median of the report's peer group of 12 small advanced economies through a 21st century economic model, focusing on productivity, population and participation, would mean in today's value an additional $22 billion in GDP and a potential additional $9 billion in tax revenues, £4,100 per person. Mr Deputy Speaker, in Scotland we are not just focusing on the now, we are focusing on the future. While the Chancellor today attempts to pull the wool over our eyes, he attempts to distract us from the bigger picture. We are not distracted. The budget is a typical Tory offering, giving with the one hand and taking with the other. The budget exposes to the people of Scotland that there is a choice to build a better future, to turn away from the isolated, economically failed UK and instead look to a more prosperous Scotland in the European Union. Only with independence can we secure a strong future for the Scottish economy and deliver for our communities and families who have been left behind, scrambling to make ends meet from crisis to crisis at the hands of consecutive failed UK governments.
Can I just say we're now on an 8-minute limit? Greg Hand. Maria Miller, point of order.
Point of order, Mr Deputy Speaker. I tried to intervene on the honourable gentleman on a number of occasions. Could he confirm to the House whether or not there are any rules in place stopping the Scottish National Party from taking such interventions?
Can I just say, Sir Mulled, it is up to them. It's up to the honourable member whether he wanted to give way. And at the beginning, he was very clear and said, I will be treating like the Chancellor of the Exchequer and Leader of the Opposition. Now, it was up to the honourable member whether he wished to. He made clear that he wouldn't. Now, I'm sorry if that was missed, because you wasn't here, but I'm not going to that, please. Well, why did you not hear him? Did you not hear him? Order. It was quite clear. He said at the beginning that he was not giving way, and we all heard that. Now then, let's make some progress, because we've got a lot of speeches. With 38 speeches who want to get in today, with an 8-minute limit.